You are listening to the Happy Gynecologist with your host, Amanda Miles, MD. Hello, my friends. How's it going? Just introduce myself. I'm Amanda Miles, MD, also known as the Happy Gynecologist. I'm an OBGYN practicing in rural Oklahoma in America. And this is my podcast to help other OBGYNs emerge from burnout, to help them stop using food and alcohol to cope with stress, and to learn to live their life again. So welcome. Just a little bit about me. Up until recently, I was like some of you might be. I was burnt out, ready to quit my job. And if you love your job, that's great. I'm very happy for you. And I hope that you never need to use this information, but bear with me. This could be you someday. I was what I thought was overwhelmed and overworked. And at the time, I was practicing as a solo OBGYN in a very small town. I had just had twins after a very complicated pregnancy and some bed rest for short cervix. And I also had a 3-year-old at the time. And so all of that probably contributed to some of my burnout as well. But I'm here today to tell you that it wasn't my job and it wasn't my kids. It wasn't all of it that created my burnout. It wasn't administration. It wasn't the EMR. It wasn't patients calling at 3 a.m. to ask if it was okay that their baby had the hiccups. It wasn't surgical complications or high acuity or IUFDs. You see, I changed a lot of that. I actually ended up quitting my job and taking a new job, and I took less call. My babies got bigger, so they slept through the night. I got a scribe. I did all the things that they tell you you need to do to fix yourself whenever you're burnt out. And I did yoga. I listened to music. I talked with older, wiser docs about how to decrease my burnout. I tried to be more efficient in clinic. But the burnout followed me. It followed me to my new job, and it was still weighing on me every day. So I don't know if any of you are feeling that right now, but it was a huge weight. And it wasn't depression. I thought for a while, maybe I'm depressed. And I actually, looked into that seriously, but it wasn't depression. It was just true burnout. So I had a hard time even telling you guys about this. It makes me kind of cringe and kind of laugh a little bit too. I had a hard time getting out of the car to walk into the clinic every morning. I don't know if anybody does that. I would sit there for, a while. I would get there a little bit early, and then I would just sit there probably for 15, 20 minutes, even after, my day probably should have already started. And so I would sit there just dreading having to go in, and the barrage of everybody needing me and, people not being happy with me, and, just the constant questions and constant people needing things and needing my attention and time. I would sit there and just dread it. And so then I would, of course, start my day late because I'm showing up, early to clinic, but then sitting there for 20 minutes before I can even walk through the door. And so, of course, that's not a great way to start your day on time. And then, of course, I would run behind and get mad that I didn't have a lunch break, or that I didn't have time to grab food, or maybe that I got home late. And so I was definitely creating some of the problem as well, as you can see. Typically also what I would do, and I don't know if this resonates with any of you, I would, about 3 p.m. start to feel pretty sorry for myself, or maybe just frustrated with clinic and deliveries or labor and delivery. And so I'd go, look through the doctor's lounge, maybe find an old donut, or I'd go over and grab a Dr. Pepper from the hospital. And so I usually most days had a 3 p.m. candy bar and Dr. Pepper to try and make myself feel better. And usually it worked for a little while until, I noticed I wasn't fitting in any of my scrubs. And so I think that, I was definitely using food at work to cope, and definitely once I got home as well. Um, I was also at a level of annoyance with my job, or kind of cynicism, where I would get so annoyed at the nurses for asking me questions, or maybe patients asking me questions. And I would get frustrated. And then I would take that frustration home and be annoyed or frustrated with my husband or my kids or the dog. And I was never really able to shut that off. And so that was, um, you know, a signal to me that I needed to do something about this, because I was so unhappy. I was ready to call it quits. I was ready to say F it and just be done. But then, of course, I started to question, oh shit, have I done all of this with my student loans? And I have so much money that I owe, and I'm fairly new to practice. Is this all there is? And now I'm stuck with all this debt. And so I started to have those questions of, what do I do with my life? How do I get out of this? Trying to run away again. I'd already left one job and I was at a new job, and I was already questioning, oh my gosh, am I still doing this for the rest of my life? So time went on, and I ended up taking my oral boards, and I passed my oral boards, thankfully. Um, and I just wondered again after that, okay, so what's next? And so I knew that then that I wasn't happy, and that I needed to figure out a way to deal with the stress, so I wasn't bringing my stress home, to stop eating every time I felt stressed. I was using food and alcohol to some extent, to just feel better every day, all day. So I don't know if that rings true with any of you. So then I got started with life coaching. I'd only ever heard of one coach. And so I figured I would start there. I started with Katrina Ubel, who's my coach. She is also a fellow physician turned life coach. And when I thought, when I started, I thought, oh my goodness, who has a life coach? I thought, I cannot tell anybody this. I can't let anybody know that I have a life coach. Who has a life coach? Like Oprah? And so it turns out I have a life coach. Okay. I have one. I'm a legit, like, normal person, and it's okay. I have a life coach. And now I am a life coach. So I think it took me some time to get over that initial kind of judgment of myself for reaching out for help. That is such a huge thing that we as physicians really struggle with. We are the helpers, and we don't need help, or we are not people that ask for help, especially when it comes to ourselves. So that was a huge barrier of mine, was just admitting that it's okay if I have a life coach. Like, I should be telling everybody that they need a life coach, because it's true, y'all. Like, this is amazing. I had no idea that this was such an industry. I had no idea that this was like a thing. And all my business friends are probably laughing at me right now, because in the business world, this is huge. Life coaching is a part of the business industry. So I think it's kind of funny to laugh at myself and look back at all the judgments I had when I first got started with life coaching. But then I learned something that is vital to our success as OBGYNs, I think. And that's really truly why I'm here. I think that every OBGYN, every generalist, every laborist, every subspecialist, every resident, every fellow, every MFM, all of us, we need to know this. We are not taught how to deal with the day-to-day stress of our jobs. If you guys are anything like me, my residency, we were taught kind of to deal with stuff with dark humor, maybe some sarcasm and cynicism. And so that's how we got through our day. That and going on what we used to call GI rounds. I don't know if any of you guys had GI rounds at at your hospital where you trained. But that was our code for, hey, we got to go do our GI rounds. And so that we could talk about, hey, let's go to the cafeteria and get some food or get a snack in front of patients or nurses. And it sounded like we were doing, official business and not just running away for a break. So that's how we coped. We would go and get food, or we would order food. And then we'd sit around and, be cynical about how, how annoying, it is that we have to do X, Y, or Z, or, make kind of dark humor jokes to make it through our stressful day. And so a key player in emerging from the burnout that I was feeling was what I learned from my life coach, Katrina, and from the life coach school where I did my certification, is this process that I'm here to teach you. And so the first step of this process is realizing that there are kind of two subsets of things out in the world. One of those things is a circumstance. A circumstance is a fact. It's totally neutral. It is concise and like factual. So, like, for example, numbers are circumstances. So, if I say a patient is 3 centimeters dilated, that, for the most part, if we all agree, she's 3 centimeters is a circumstance. Okay, it's a measurement. It is true. Then the other subset of things that exist in the world are thoughts. And so what I mean by this is basically anything that we think about during the day is mostly a thought, right? And so, but most of the time we're walking around thinking that our thoughts are fact, and that's not necessarily true. So we have to kind of draw this line of separation between circumstances and thoughts. And so whenever I started really being aware of this, it was amazing to me that what I think is not just fact. So that sounds really conceited, but you probably do this too. Okay, so let me give you an example. For example, I show up to labor and delivery at lunchtime to go check on a patient that just got admitted. And the nurse says she's 3 centimeters dilated and she's in early labor. Okay. She's contracting every 2 minutes. Okay. So she's 3 centimeters dilated. I go check her. I agree. We use a little measuring board. We both agree that this is a fact. She's 3 centimeters dilated and she's contracting every 2 minutes. Those are measurements. Those are facts. But my brain doesn't just think, okay, she's 3 centimeters dilated and she's contracting every 2 minutes. No, my brain starts to tell me a story. I don't know if this has ever happened to you. My brain starts telling me this story, I think, most of the time, or kind of gets run away. And I have thoughts like, oh, she's only 3 centimeters dilated and I am going to be up here all night long. Okay, so that's what my brain does to me. I don't know if your brain's ever done that to you. And so that's my thought about this situation. Okay, so you can see that there are circumstances which are very factual. They're measurements, they're numbers, they're true. Everybody would agree. And then there's my thought about this situation, which is, she's only 3. I'm going to be here all night. And so I don't know. Do any of you, other docs out there, do you catastrophize like I do in situations like this, right? So you can see that the thought I'm having could lead to me feeling maybe kind of frustrated, kind of annoyed. And I get kind of in a tizzy thinking I'm going to be up all night. So what do? Well, I'm frustrated. So I probably go to the nurse's station and get some chocolate out of a little candy bowl. And I go sit down and I muddle through writing a note and I complain to everybody that will listen to me. I don't know if you guys do that. If you have a buddy you complain to, or your nurse, or maybe just the L&D nurses. And then I go back to clinic and I trudge through clinic and I think about how I'm going to be up all night and how awful it's going to be. And then I run behind in clinic. Probably because I'm complaining so much and not actually doing work. And then I go home and maybe I complain to my husband and I'm kind of grumpy through dinner. And then after the kids are in bed, I scroll social media and snack on snacks and kind of numb out on the couch, kind of grumpy because I'm going to be up all night. And maybe I stay up late watching Netflix until they finally call me at 1 a.m. to come for this delivery. And so these are all actions that I've been taking because of the original thought of, ugh, she's going to be up all night, or I'm going to be up all night because she's only 3 centimeters. So the result that I'm creating here, or the result of all this is, I'm up all night because I'm pouting about this. I'm frustrated and I'm, you know, not happy, and I have like a little brain temper tantrum. And so I'm up all night and then I hate my job. And then I'm gaining weight because, of course, once I go and deliver at 1 a.m., I'm going to have some more snacks at the hospital, or at least like an orange juice from the patient fridge, right? Maybe some graham crackers with peanut butter. You know, you guys know the drill, right? And so I'm, creating this result based off of the thoughts that I'm having. Okay. Do you guys kind of see how this played out? And so you're like, well, yeah, Miles, that's normal, right? That's what we do. So what I want to offer you is that this is not how it has to be. It does not have to be this hard. Okay. And whenever I started this work, I was just like, yeah, it does. That's what happens. I have to stay up all night and then I have to chart. And then I am super grumpy because I'm up all night and I don't have any sleep. And then I start the next day. Okay. And so I have all this evidence for why my job is the cause of the problem, when really it's the thoughts that I'm thinking about the situation. Okay. Because remember, I changed my job, I changed my circumstances, I changed my whole life trying to run away from a job creating burnout. Right. And then I got to my new job and everything was, quote unquote, better. And I still struggled with burnout. So let me show you kind of the alternative. Okay. And bear with me if you're still listening. You're like, yeah, right, Miles. And you just like clicked exit probably already. Bear with me. Okay. So how this situation could have gone is I could have gone to labor and delivery, checked this girl and said, yep, she's 3 centimeters. We all agree, right? And then maybe I could have given her the benefit of the doubt, or looked at this a different way of, she's 3 centimeters. Maybe she'll go fast. Okay. Now, I'm not trying to be all Pollyanna here. Okay. I'm not trying to say you need to change everything that you think into well, I'm glad because, or maybe, I'm just trying to say maybe even a small tweak on your thinking can help change your life. Because it definitely changed mine. Okay. Lots of little small tweaks add up to be a huge game changer. Okay. So here's what I do whenever I think, she's 3 centimeters. Well, maybe she'll go fast. Okay. I feel much different. I feel maybe a little bit optimistic. I feel maybe a little like, maybe she'll go fast. That could be fun. Like those are kind of the thoughts that kind of come from my brain whenever I'm thinking, maybe she'll go fast. It makes me more hopeful and more like positive just by changing that small wording. So, okay, maybe she'll go fast. I go do my charting without complaint. I go about my day at clinic. I'm not really that grumpy at home. And maybe I even have thoughts about, maybe she'll go fast, but maybe I better get some early rest in tonight. In case I'm up tonight or whenever I come back for this delivery, I'll have some rest already on board. And so it leads me to be a more self-compassionate person, but also a more passionate person towards that patient. Do you see how like giving her the benefit of the doubt, or like just like changing my thinking a little bit, allows me to love her more? I'm loving this patient more. I'm taking better care of her because I've said, maybe she'll go fast. And so I'm not like, oh my gosh, she's going to be, in labor forever. I'm going to be up here all night, where I'm like kind of frustrated and angry at her, even though it's not up to her, it's not up to the nurse. Well, depending on if they, if they increase my pit or not, right? That's always our thought. But even then, we've all seen it where they, can go from 3 to complete in a couple hours, or they can be 3 the next day. Okay. We don't know. We don't know. Okay. And we can't control that, even though we really like to. That's going to be another episode. So you can kind of see that one small change in my thinking can lead to a completely different result. Okay. So maybe I go to bed early. I go back and do her delivery. I have fun at her delivery, even though I'm up at 1 a.m. This is what we all love, right, y'all? Like, we love delivering babies, and they don't always come during the day. We know this. And so not all of us are laborious. So, that's, a different topic as well, but there's still, some of those thoughts. It doesn't matter what field you're in as an OBGYN. This is one example, right? And so what I'm here to tell you is that sometimes whenever you're stuck in this pattern of negative thinking, that's your default. And we've done this for years, so it's hard to not be like that sometimes. And so if we start slowly reminding our brains, just slowly noticing, even whenever our brain tries to do this to us, just kind of thinking, there goes my brain again, thinking that kind of crazy story of, I'm going to be up all night. Okay. That might not be true. We don't know. So if we start slowly reminding our brain that not everything is a catastrophe and that it's never as bad as our brain makes it out to be, that maybe this patient will surprise us. Okay. She may not, and we may be up there all night, but how we approach this matters. And you guys, this is the best news that I can give you. Okay. That is the one thing that we can control, that we can approach this in a new way. And over time, I'm telling you, this is how you change your life. Okay. So this is why I am here. I am here to try and help as many OBGYNs as I can, because y'all, we've got to learn this. We have to learn how to not be so freaking stressed out. Okay. And burnt out and over it and about to say F it and quit our jobs. I read a statistic recently that said something like 40% of OBGYNs quit their jobs. And this is, I think, female OBGYNs quit their jobs within the first 6 years of practice, y'all. Think about that. Something like 80 or 85% of graduating OBGYNs are female, and then 40% of us are going to quit within 6 years. This is why, okay? We're overwhelmed. We feel overworked. We're frazzled. We're frustrated. We're trying to balance home and work and meetings and, all the things, okay? Trying to climb that ladder and be awesome, because we are. This is where the work is. We have to figure out how to do it. Okay. And I can help you. That's why I'm here. Okay. I'm so excited. So thank you for listening to my first podcast. If you'd like to learn more about this topic, head on over to my website. It is coach-miles.com. You can also find me on Instagram, Coach Miles MD. And I'm so excited that we're here together, and I hope that you join me next week. Thanks for joining me today on the Happy Gynecologist. If you have questions or comments, head on over to my website, coach-miles.com, or follow me on Instagram at CoachMilesMD. I'd also love it if you left me a review on iTunes. See you next week.